But with that, it is time. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Natasha Nurse, if you're not already familiar with who I am, and I am the owner and co-founder of Dressing Room 8, a coaching and consulting business that's primarily dedicated to working with women creatives, women entrepreneurs, women just who are looking for personal and professional transformation in their life. And I do a lot of this content that you may or may not have seen, but a lot of it is all about speaking to her career, right? Speaking to a woman's belief system, mindset. Also speaking on entrepreneurial topics or speaking on lifestyle things like health and wellness, things like that. And today, what brings us in this moment is a series that I've started, and we're early on in the series. So if you've missed any of the other content, you can always go and get caught up on the Dressing Room 8 YouTube page. So just go to dressingroom8.com and then just go to the top of the website or bottom, depending upon what you're looking at, and you can click on the YouTube icon and it'll take you right, and you'll see all the different resources. Also on the website itself, if you go to the freebies page, you can access my content, my videos there as well. So multiple ways to touch and feel everything. And today we are talking about the Undress Your Mind series, but specifically Undress Your Mind of guilt. So how many people here feel like they deal with guilt fairly often in their life? I could not be talking about something that has no relevance in my life. I definitely would say that guilt is something that has plagued me, I would say more before the Enlightenment. Right? Like before working on yourself and really diving deep into professional development and personal growth, I think we're all riddled with things. But the minute you decide to work on something, right, it instantly becomes better. So for me, guilt was something that I experienced, I would say primarily in the career arena, definitely in the family arena, a lot actually. And these are personal expectations, right? Nothing that anyone is particularly, well, some in the family arena, I would say some people have like one-on-one try to guilt rid me with things, but the career, definitely just a personal standards, family, in other people, as well as my own personal expectations. And then relationship, I guess, yeah, I think as if you are dedicated to wanting to be a good partner and a good spouse, I think there's levels of guilt that you start to feel and or read about and or experience. And then you're like, oh, should I be thinking about this? Is this something that's at issue for me? So let's get into it. What is guilt? What is this feeling that we feel? So according to Psychology Today, shout out to Psychology Today, it's something that can be described as shaming us, right? It can paralyze us. It can also catalyze us into action. And so then I said, okay, well, those are, I think, really good synonyms or kind of concepts to really break down the concept of guilt. But then what? So what are the ways that we deal with it? So I'll just throw out some categories. And again, I didn't necessarily say this in the beginning, but if you have questions or you have comments, feel free to add them in here. And even if you join this late, or if you're joining this on the replay, that's totally fine. You can still add in questions, add in comments. I can go back and see and engage with you. Okay. So the common ways that we deal with guilt. So definitely work, right? Am I working enough? Am I doing enough work? Am I doing too much work? Family. Am I a good enough spouse? Am I a good enough mom, dad, caregiver? Friends. Am I spending enough time with my friends? Am I being a good friend? Is this person need more of me? Do I need to give less of me? Personally, what are certain personal goals that you've set for yourself and you're not achieving? Are you then feeling the sense of guilt, feeling the sense of shame of not accomplishing enough, not accomplishing what you set out to accomplish? Social media. We see a lot of content about various aspects of life, whether it's animal abuse, children abuse, violence against women, people being persecuted. Do we feel a sense of guilt about not participating and protesting something that we are vehemently against? Do we feel a sense of guilt for even watching certain content and being like, oh, should I be watching this? Da, da, da. Right? Like there's all different layers of guilt that I think gets wrapped into social media. And then, of course, media and entertainment. Do we feel guilty about our guilty pleasures when it comes to certain television or programming that we're consuming? Do we feel guilty about how we think about celebrities, how we think about people in the public eye? Politics. Do we have a sense of guilt when it comes to certain political agendas that are being pushed forward? Do we feel guilty about not participating in politics enough? Do we feel guilty about doing too much, right? Other layers, sticky layers that start to develop in that arena. And then, of course, the news. Are we watching enough news? Are we guilty of watching too much? Guilty of not watching enough? Guilty of not responding, just consuming and not acting, right? And those are just some categories. There definitely are other categories that you can add to this list, but those are just some of the ones that come to mind for me in my life, or the people that I work with, or that have an effect on my life. So with that, I think that's the perfect lead in to discussing 8 ways to rid yourself of guilt. So, what is my number one? If you can guess my number one, I would, I'm not going to give you like a gold star, but like, I would just love to know if you're reading my mind, if you're vibing with me, right? So please put it in the comment section, send me a message, give me hearts, likes, all that good stuff. Number one with a bullet of the best way to live your life, guilt-free, and like I like to say, living your best life, essentially, is to say no when you want to say no. Why do I say this? Because a lot of times I think, and at least for myself and for the people that I've worked with, I hear this common sentiment of, I said yes, but I didn't want to. I said yes, but I didn't really know if I was going to be able to do this. I said yes, but it really wasn't the best time. I said yes, but fill in the blank, right? If yes is not the decision that you wanted to make, if yes is going to result in an outcome that doesn't work in your favor, then why are we saying the word yes? Now, granted, Shonda Rhimes says, hey, year of yes, 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 I get it. We've got to say yes. But if you've read the book, which I did and it was phenomenal, you would understand that even if you're in your year of yes, there are opportunities to say no that is still in the sentiment of the year that you're living, or the yes attitude, the openness to the universe that you're trying to achieve. You literally can say yes to everything, absolutely, but there's a consequence for that, right? And if you're not willing to live with those consequences, and or you're not willing to deal with those consequences, then what is the alternative? It means you have to say no, right? It's not rocket science here. So first way to stop living with guilt in your life is to say no when you mean to say no. Yes is not no. Those are two separate words. So say yes when you want to say yes, and understand and live with the consequences of saying yes. And guess what? It works the same for no. When you say no, live with the consequence of saying no. Second, weigh the pros and cons before you make your decision. I think that being more strategic in how you answer people will help you become less guilt ridden, right? Because I think it's really easy to be struggling with guilt when you're not necessarily, just adjusting, when you're not necessarily living in a way that is conducive for you to have made your decision. Now, what do I mean by that? If someone says they want to ask you to do something, if they want you to go somewhere, instead of giving an immediate answer, which I know sometimes people are very demanding and they can say, okay, well, I need to know right now. That's great, good for you. But if you need time to sit and give an answer, and now granted, you have to weigh that with the overthinking kind of road, the yellow brick road that some people can go down. But if ultimately, say someone asks you a question and you're in the middle of a task and you literally cannot think about the question, then you can't give an answer, right? I think it's completely reasonable to say, hey, I can tell you after 5 p.m. I can tell you on Wednesday, right? Like, give yourself a cushion for you to have time to then sit and think. And if you need to literally take out a writing pad or take out your phone and do a pro-con list on the decision, it might be something a little bit deeper than, hey, do you want to go to the movie? It might be something like, hey, do you want to be a business partner? Hey, do you want to invest in my company? Hey, do you want to, lend me X amount, So if this is something where it's going to require great thought and you really have to like sit with the information being told to you, you might have additional questions. Instead of just giving an answer and then feeling guilty about having to renege or having to live with the consequence of your decision and then be feeling a sense of shame about it the entire time, sit with the information. Sit and say, you know what? I'm going to get back to you a week from now. I'm going to get back to you. Like, give people the deadline so that A, you have your own deadline as to when you need to decide what you're doing, and then you can move forward. Number 3, I like to think of this as kind of like when we go shopping and we see final sale only. I like to take the approach of when I make a decision, final decisions only. Another really good way to stop being guilty about crap is to have final decisions. Do not make a decision and then say, okay, well, it's going to go play with other people and then it's going to think about it. It might get dressed. It might go to prom. Wait a minute. A decision is not a baby who's going to grow up and go off and be this fabulous bird, right? A decision is a decision. So if you cannot, again, make final decisions initially, then give yourself a cushion and come to the time where you can make a final decision and then give people that final decision, because it's not fair to you or the person you're speaking to if you're kind of, playing footsie with your decision-making process. Like, it's yes or it's no. That's it. People don't need to hear the yes, no, maybe, yes, no, yet, maybe. Get a grip. Make a final decision, right? Like, okay. So I hope that makes sense to everyone. And if you disagree with me, I want to hear that. If you agree with me and you've maybe used one of these techniques and it's worked in your favor, love to hear it. I'm all about hearing success stories as well as challenging stories, right? Because there's lessons to be learned in both arenas. Next is, who are you living for? I think this is a question you need to be asking yourself on a daily basis, if it's not already clear to you. For me, it's clear I live for Natasha, and Natasha has X amount of things that Natasha wants to do. But I cannot live for you. I cannot live for my parents. I cannot live for my ancestors. I cannot live for anyone else but Natasha. Now, Natasha can make decisions that can hopefully benefit the world. Natasha can hopefully make decisions that make her ancestors proud. Natasha can make decisions that make her parents pleased. Sometimes, not sometimes, right? It all depends. But ultimately, I've got to live for me. And you have to do the same, right? How easy would it be to not have guilt if every day you set the tone for the day and said, I'm living for me, right? And then you have to fill in the blank of that checklist of what that means for you. So for you, living for you might mean, you know what? Instead of listening to the spouse, bitch and moan for 20 minutes in the morning, or playing around with the kids and they're, they really wake up at like 9, but you start the process 8:30 and they just waste your time in between, right? Like what, and you really want to go read. You really want to be writing 30 minutes a day in your book. You really want to go in the basement and work out. Live for you. Start the day for you. Set the tone for the day for you. But ultimately, we always have to be asking ourselves, are we living for us? Are we living for someone else? So there's that. Then number 5 would be, own the decision-making process that's happening in your life. I think it's really easy to kind of either guilt people, and we've been talking about mostly scenarios where people are going to try to guilt you, right? Or you're going to feel a sense of guilt. But ultimately, I want you to think about, if I didn't want to live with guilt anymore, right? Which, who does? Who wants to live with guilt? It doesn't feel good. It doesn't enhance the day or the life experience. So a big part of that, and I have really tried to hone in on this in my own life, is owning the decision-making power. So many people do what? They act like life is happening to them instead of for them. Now, when Tony Robbins said, life happens to you, doesn't happen to you, it happens for you, he was not joking. That was not like for kicks and giggles, right? I think he was making the point that there is a sense of ownership that people are lacking when it comes to the decisions that they're making and the lives that they're living. So if you can own the fact that what? You wake up, you decide what the first thing is that you do when you wake up. You decide the food that you put in your body. You decide the drinks that you drink or don't drink. You decide the substance that you may or may not abuse. You decide whether or not you're going to work that day. You decide the type of career you end up in, right? Like, it's all conscious, willing decisions. This is not just happenstance. Woo! Just like, right? Like, all purposeful, right? Now, whether or not you want to own that or accept that, again, is up to you. But the minute that you do, we can start to what? To deconstruct the idea that someone shamed us into being a lawyer, right? I'm a lawyer by trade. Did I do this voluntarily? Absolutely. Did I feel pressured to go and get into a professional career initially? I wouldn't necessarily say I felt pressure in the sense of like a parent down my throat saying, yes, you have to do this. But I did feel the pressure in a part of my culture, being of Caribbean background. If you are familiar with this, I say this all the time. Most children of Caribbean parents are doctors, are lawyers, are nurses, are engineers, are teachers, because that is something that is emphasized in our culture. That, like, especially when your family comes from an island, they come here, sacrifice everything for you, right? You must go to school, you must do something with your life, right? So, like, all of this, like, guilt of, like, me give everything and you know I do nothing, right? Like, okay, so I didn't necessarily feel it in that way, but do I have cousins that are doctors and lawyers and super successful? Absolutely. So there was already a precedence of like, this is what your family can achieve. What are you going to do? Right? And so that's where I think that I took that. And again, that was an internal pressure that was kind of subduely provided to me in the types of conversations and the types of things that were talked about to me or around me. And then I made the decision to move forward. And of course you can validate anything. So I validated the experience by saying, well, there's a lot that I can learn, but ultimately it was my decision. So, you know, can I use guilt in saying that I'm XYZ because of other people? No. Everything happens for a reason. So that was a purposeful decision. Hope that makes sense. And if you have any questions or confusions or anything, again, just add comments, let me know. And next, I would say refusing to allow regret in your life is a really good way to kind of be living and focusing on this kind of guilt-free existence. Why do I say that? Because if you refuse to say that if you say, I refuse to have, so sorry for the camera shaking and stuff. Okay. If you say, I refuse to have regret in my life, then what does that mean? Then you are definitely owning the decisions that you're making, but also you are what? You are going to be conscientious, you're going to be strategic, and you're going to be very mindful of the decisions you're making, right? So that that ties in a couple of things I've said. So you're gonna say no when you wanna say no. You're going to weigh the pros and cons of decisions, give yourself the time that you need. You're going to make sure final sale, final decision, right? It's do or die. This is how you're living your best life. and you're living for you, not for anyone else. You see how I tied that all in there? Exactly. So if by saying no regrets, final decisions, living for you, saying no, weighing the pros and cons, it allows you to not be guilty about anything because you did the steps, you did your due diligence, you did what you needed to do to move forward. Now, am I saying every decision you make will be the quote unquote right decision? I think that we have to be careful in our society about labeling right and wrong. Now, granted, there are legal confines of right and wrong and legal and illegal, right? But if we're stepping away from that and we're just literally talking about, should I become an entrepreneur, not an entrepreneur? Should I become an artist, not an artist? Should I be a teacher, not a teacher, right? Like within those types of realms of decision making, ultimately, if you decide this is for you, this is not for you, you leave it on the table and you walk away, right? And we don't go back and we don't say 30 years from now, oh, well, I could have had that art studio, but my husband didn't want me to. Really? Like, really? So, make the decision, own it. And now, granted, am I saying everyone is in equally powered relationships and feel like they have the most power in their life? Maybe not. But again, that's up to you to decide what you need to do about that. That's up to you to decide the decisions you need to make so that you do feel empowered to make the decisions you need to make to live your best life. Okay? Next on deck would be accepting that everything is so I like to say, what's meant to be is meant to be, right? And that's just like a commonly said phrase. I think it's like Hakuna Matata, right? Like from Lion King, it means no worries. Like at the end of the day, what's meant to be will be, right? If you were meant to say yes, you'll say yes. If you were meant to say no, you'll say no. So I think this worrying, I hear a lot, especially from my clients, well, what if, listen, unless you're a seer and you can see the future and you can, and okay, so I see it, it's happening, right? Like if that's not a power of yours, then get a grip. Stop talking about the what ifs. Decide what are the consequences if you do make this decision. What are the consequences of you not making the decision? Make your decision and move on, right? And if whatever's meant to be will be, right? So maybe you are meant to do X, but this time you say no. Guess what? I'm sure X will find its way back to you 3 months from now, 3 years from now. If X is meant to be in your life, it will be. But if it's not, it's not. It's really as people like to tell me, it's that simple, right? Or it's not. Some people might say, well, it's not that simple. Sure, you can make life as complicated and as very convoluted as you like it to be. But if it doesn't get you the result you want, if it doesn't feel good, then really, why? Why are we doing that? So think about that. What's meant for you is meant for you. What's not meant for you is not meant for you. And you have a role in creating opportunities for yourself and accepting opportunities. But ultimately, it's all a part of the journey. Okay, lastly, and I hope you guys are still yes, okay, this is making sense. Okay, good. We're on good time. We have a couple minutes left. Embracing that you may be a loner when it comes to your thinking. You may be a loner when it comes to the decisions you make, right? Some people in your life may say, you know what? I'm not with you. It's sad. It's definitely sad. I would say that this year I've culled the herd very succinctly, and it's been pretty amazing. I would say, and I actually just recently was speaking to people about this. Ultimately, the more strategic you are about your time, the more time you create in your schedule. We, as people, waste a lot of time. We waste a lot of time doing things and speaking with people that you do not need to be speaking with, or doing things that you do not need to be doing. It is up to you to decide what is a good use of your time and what is not a good use of your time. And if you don't know, start to take the time to assess it. Maybe test things out. Maybe don't do X activity this week and see the result in that. Did you get to the gym more? Did you get to do more work? Did you read more? Did you write more? Right? Test it out. But it's up to you to figure out what is good for you and what is not good for you. And if you don't know that, learn. That's what, this idea that I just don't know or I don't have time, all straight bullshit. Bull. I call bull. So if you disagree, let your girl know, let me know. But I think if you try out what I'm saying, if you think deeply about what I'm saying, I think you'll agree. And I think that you'll say, you know what, Natasha, you're completely right. I stopped talking to this person and I gained an hour in my week. I stopped reading this and I felt amazing about my body. I stopped worrying about money and I made money that day. Try it out. You don't know until you try it out. So please, 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 please figure it out. And if you don't know, it's up to you to figure it out, right? And that's how you kind of conquer this guilt-free living. Okay, so just to go over some quick examples before our time runs out, because you all, I try to stick to my time guidelines for you. I wanted to do a couple examples. I don't know if I'll hit all of them. First example, Jane asks you to go to a party and you are tired. It's like 7 o'clock, you're getting out of work, you want to go home. Jane says, hey, I haven't seen you in 3 months. Do you go? We're talking all about guilt. So if you do go to the party, you then what? You feel guilty that you know that you will get home past midnight, you'll be tired and go to work the next day really tired and feel guilty about that. But then also you could what? Feel guilty about not going, wonder how, if Jane is going to be mad at you, will she still be your friend? And then you could have, quote unquote, distanced yourself in that relationship more. If you're living for you, what is the decision to be made here? So I'll quickly tell you my answer. If you are tired and you do not want to go and you do not think it's going to result in an opportunity that is worth the consequence that is going to happen from going, don't go. If you're willing to be tired, if you're willing to deal with the consequence of going and seeing your friend Jane and you think it's important to do it, then do it. But don't say that you were guilted into it. Own the fact that you went. And try to enjoy yourself, because obviously you are going to have a consequence of going to this. So that's an example. What's another example? You have a family reunion coming up. Those are really popular this summer. But you're on a tight budget because you're saving money for a new car. Maybe you have a older aunt that's there and maybe she's celebrating a birthday at this family reunion event that's taking place. Do you go and take money away from the car that you need to buy, even though the current car you're having is having issues? Or do you go to the reunion and kind of take money away, or you skip the reunion and continue on your savings plan? So guilt on both sides. Guilt of, if I don't go, I don't see this aging relative, I don't go to the family reunion, everyone says I'm supposed to go to this, but then what if my car breaks down and then I don't have a new car? Or you don't go, you disappoint the family, but then you're closer towards getting the new car, but then you feel guilty about that. What do you do? If you're living for you, what do you do? Now, should I give you my answer, or should I make you think and wonder? My answer, to be honest, would be skip it and save for the car, because if your current car is having issues, then the money that you would have saved for the family reunion, you could have put that towards your car. So that's what I would do. But if you have an alternative answer, I'd love to hear it. Now, I had a couple of other scenarios, but we are running down on time, so I'm just going to kind of keep going. So what's next? If you would greatly share this video, I would greatly appreciate it. Share it with people. Share it with 3 people that have tried to guilt you into something, and or they're currently dealing with guilt and they need to watch this right now. Secondly, you make sure that you tag Dressing Room 8. So if you're sharing this on Facebook, my handle is dr8fashion. And then also, if you have a follow-up question, always feel free to email me, Natasha at dressingroom8. And what was I going to say? And then also make sure you visit dressingroom8.com is the website. You can always read more content that I put out, as well as reach me there. Okay. And then lastly, if you want to have another discussion about guilt, this is the Undress Your Mind series of guilt, Undress Your Mind of Guilt. But if you want a part 2, I'm happy to do so. All you have to do is in the comment section, just put #guilty session with the number 2, and I will know that, hey, you want to do this again. All right. And so with that, I just hope that today you can decide to live a guilt-free life, and then you start today. And I hope that if you, any of the things that we talked about today, if they have real significance for you right this moment and you want to talk about it, holler at your girl. Go to the website, dressingroom8.com, or email me, Natasha at dressingroom8.com. And I'll include that at the end of all this. All right. So thank you for your time. It's always a pleasure, and I'll see you soon.